Let's get to Michael Betrus. He's with us now, has a book out on COVID-19 exposing some of the lies for what it is. And Michael, first of all, sorry for the confusion on Monday. That was my bad. I didn't go through the proper channels in my company, and so I'm sorry about that. But Michael, thanks for being with us now.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Mike, tell us about your book that's out. What inspired it?
Well, I'll get to that in just a second. I just want to call something out. I appreciated your plug on Newsmax. I was on Newsmax on Friday, and I didn't realize you were broadcasting from New York. And one of the things that we talked about was schools being delayed reopening, and the fact that New York is a ghost town, that was your word that you described. It seems so tragic. What I don't know that a lot of New Yorkers realize is for the last 3 months, New York's had basically zero fatalities, and hospitalizations and even cases are down. And so it's interesting, how can you possibly justify continued lockdowns in the New York, Connecticut area? I can't even fathom it.
Well, there's been no deaths for what? I know when I got here it was 2 days. Has it extended to 3 days now?
Well, so I'm really looking more big picture, right? For 3 months, the trend line's been extremely low. Barely measurable. If you look at the charts that everybody looks at in terms of these curves, and New York got hit so hard in April and peeled down in May, but really since mid-June to mid-September, it's been really not statistically significant. I just can't believe it. Anyway, to your question about it, I started following the cruise ships, the 2 cruise ships that were quarantined before we had lockdowns in February and March. And I followed it just out of curiosity. And the second cruise ship was out at sea in the Pacific for 4 days. And when it was porting into Oakland, it was covered like the Bronco chase. And I thought, wow, this is really going to be something. Like, is it like the leper colony coming in from Ben-Hur? Something like that. And then nothing happened. And so we ended up with 2 cruise ships, 7,400 passengers, and 10 fatalities, all very elderly. And then a few days later, 10 days later, the Imperial College, the very first model that prompted the lockdowns, had forecasted 2.2 million deaths in a do-nothing scenario. And I thought, that doesn't make any sense. If that's true, more would have happened on the cruise ships. So I started applying all the data inputs from the Imperial College model to the cruise ships. This was before I wrote the book. And I came up with, we should have had 155 deaths on those cruise ships compared to 10. And so after we locked down and 40 million people went unemployed, writing the book became a calling. I wrote the book in the month of April and updated it in May and June, and then got it published up on Amazon. But it's I'm shocked that we're still where we are.
Let's get to New York, Michael, and then go backwards. So I've been here for 2 days. It is a ghost town. I mean, I don't know what de Blasio thinks is going to happen here. He's bankrupting the city. There's no businesses open. There's no offices. I don't know how these people are paying the rents. No one is here. You still can't go in a restaurant. I mean, think about this. It's September. You cannot go inside a restaurant. You have to eat outside. Now, you got maybe a month of that, and then the weather's too cold. But how do you make any money when you can't go inside? You can't go to a bar. So, we had an event here last night. We put on for Steve Bannon, starting his national, the Democrats are going to steal 2020 tour, and we were on 3 West Club. So you had to go outside. Luckily, there's a terrace, so you have to go outside on the terrace. If you go inside, you have to put masks on. You have to social distance. Naturally, you got people coming in with video cameras to rat on you how many people don't have masks. But the city is shut down. I got out of Penn Station Sunday night at midnight. Normally, it takes me 30 minutes to get a taxi because you're in a taxi line.
Right.
Sunday night, it took me 30 minutes to get a taxi because there's nobody on the street. I mean, when does this end?
It's a great question. I mean, I'm shocked that we're still here. I mean, I live in Dallas, Texas, and conservative state, right? And we still have partial lockdowns and mask orders, and I'm just not sure. We're lacking critical thinking and balance. That's why I'm so appreciative that Scott Atlas is on the team now in the White House, because I feel like he's got he's the first person that's really demonstrated any kind of balance for the lockdowns. Everybody else seems so myopic, talking about we need to pull cases down to like practically zero. That's not practical nor desirable. We want people to get cases in the healthy part of the population and then get through it so they're not transmitters of this. And then that's how it's a Sweden situation, and that's how you sort of get through it. And New York is there. New York is there right now. I mean, you can see the evidence for 3 months. The fact that they're shut down is stunning. Really stunning.
So we're going to go back in history, and there's certainly going to be debate over what the value of these lockdowns were, because even if you look at the South and the Sun Belt, and remember we had the spike over the summer and everybody was going crazy over it. It was in the Washington Post and New York Times headlines every day. Everybody in Jacksonville, Florida was going to die. Of course, they did that when we were having the convention there, right? They sent reporters there and said, if you go to Jacksonville, you will die, and so will everybody in your family, no matter where they are. Soon as Trump pulled out of Jacksonville, that was the end of it. There was never another story on how many people had it in Jacksonville. I mean, the fake news is incredible with this. But what evidence is there of that lockdowns have been successful anywhere? Is there any? They say science and data. Give me some science and data that says I locked something down and it made a difference.
Right. So there's two things. There's no evidence that correlates lockdowns with suppressing this. The reason is it's a virus. It's too hard to contain. You probably, if you remember back in the 90s, you saw the movie Outbreak. So if you had an outbreak type of scenario in a small town in California like they did, that's a containable type of environment, perhaps. If you have something that's where we probably have 75 to 90 million people that have been infected with this virus, it's uncontainable at this point. And so these lockdown measures, one, they're preposterous because there's no correlating data. The countries that have locked down the hardest have been hit the hardest. Now, I'm not saying lockdowns are causing more COVID deaths. They are causing more what we term lockdown deaths, and I can go into that in a second. But the other thing is this mask-wearing mandate, and you had CDC Director Redfield last week hold his mask up in front of a hearing and say, like, this is the ticket out. It's not the ticket out. The reason is if you look at places like Los Angeles, Hawaii, Japan, the Philippines, Spain and France now, all those places had surging cases, whatever that means, but surging cases long after mask mandates. The reason is anything less than a respirator N95 mask, the pores are 1,000 times larger than viral particles. That's why masks don't stunt any of these cases. The virus rolls right through them. That's why some of these policies are so insane, and to hear people like Dr. Birx or Dr. Redfield or Dr. Fauci talk about the importance of masks, forget politicians because they're just yielding to the polls and they really don't know either. The data doesn't support any correlating data to masks suppressing the virus in cases or anything else. It's nuts, John.
Are you saying, based on your investigation, your knowledge, and you have written an excellent book, by the way, Lockdowns on Trial, you can get that on Amazon, Michael Betrus, are you saying that you're questioning the value of masks, wearing a mask, in stopping the spread of the virus? Is that what I'm hearing, Michael?
Yes, it's completely meaningless. It's there's no data, no trend lines that support this geographic area wore masks, and then they had complete suppression of it. That didn't happen. You've got this virus rolls through with almost identical curves everywhere it goes, and that includes whether the cities, states, countries, whatever, are having mask mandates or not. New York's got a mask mandate, but they've had no activity for 3 months. I mean, kind of an 8th grade stats student could kind of figure out that they've got a population immunity situation in New York, Connecticut, Jersey. And then you have to also factor in well over half of all the fatalities have sourced from nursing homes. So when you start thinking about how many people have died, there's massive overcounting. We probably had 120,000 of the 200-plus real COVID-prompted deaths. That's a real number, so I'm certainly not a COVID denier. That's real. But you've also got this thing called lockdown deaths. And so these are deaths that wouldn't have happened if we never locked down. And so when you start piecing that back, we probably have about 60,000 lockdown deaths. So if you start taking the COVID deaths less the lockdown deaths, you end up with a net figure that doesn't justify what we're doing. It just doesn't.
So, Michael, where do we go from here?
Well, I think the problem is less the politicians than the American mindset. So you've got polls that are supporting continued lockdowns and mask wearing really all over the country, including Texas. And I think that's because, or it is because, you've got a lot of media pressure or promotion of fear, things like cases. Like, for an example, outbreak at all these different universities. I've got a son who's at the University of Oklahoma. I know a lot of kids that have tested positive for COVID-19 or for SARS-CoV-2. What the media doesn't report on is out of 30,000 cases, there's been zero hospitalizations out of any schools that reopen. We're at a 5-month low in overall COVID hospitalizations. When that news doesn't get out, that good news, then you've got people that are still afraid, and if people are still afraid, it's an easy ticket for the politicians to keep everybody kind of suppressed and locked down. So I think that the American people are going to have to change their fear mindset. That will drive polls, that will open things up.
John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. We're live in New York City today. We'll be in Florida on Thursday, Friday, and Monday. We're with Michael Betrus today, author of a new book. You can get it on Amazon or your favorite bookstore, Lockdowns on Trial, about COVID-19. So my question is, of course, the media has gone, the legacy fake news in order to stoke fear and defeat Trump, jumped from hospital beds running out, ventilators running out, people dying on the street, body bags in cul-de-sacs. I mean, we threw all this. Now they're on to cases, right? So we have massive testing. Everybody gets a test, and now cases are up, so they want to shut down college football, college campuses, go on Zoom because of cases. Yet hospitalizations are at an all-time low. Hospitals actually losing money because they can't give people, nobody goes for elective surgery. Hospitalizations are way down. There's plenty of bed space available. Deaths are down as a percentage basis, under 85. Now we find out from the CDC of the 198,000 people who have died. That's not a good thing. Only 6% of them were COVID only. The other 94% had other very severe contributing morbidities. When does this stop? When do people just say, you know what, I had enough? And why do the Democrats, why are they intent on keeping things locked down, masks on? What is their objective?
So first, it's an interesting thing because when you think about a Democrat constituent, so you've got COVID-19, it really preys on the physically frail. And the lockdowns really prey on the socially and economically frail. You know, in my neighborhood in Dallas, we've got an app called Nextdoor where there's kind of a community. I don't know if you have that where you live. Community sharing, you can post things. I've never seen so many requests for tutors. And the reason is kids are facing a lost year here. So they won't be able to catch up on things like math and sciences. You can kind of absorb qualitative classes, but kids are screwed. And so I honestly don't know the answer to this. Again, I thought we would be out of this by now, and it just hasn't happened. And I think you're going to have to see a couple things. Unemployment benefits are going to have to stop being extended because that will force people to, I'm not saying riot, but certainly protest and put pressure on politicians to reopen things up. So I think that's one part of it. The other is just simply getting reality news out there. Because the cases number is good, but it's spun in a bad way. And so cases are unreliable, deaths are unreliable. You've got close to 1,000 deaths per day, but over half of those are backdated up to 4 or 5 months. So in real-time deaths, we're doing great. You know, 8,000 people die every day in America, and we're down to under 400 per day in real-time deaths. That's less than an epidemic level. So there's so much good news out there, John, and it just doesn't. It's not finding its way, and until it does, the politicians really have
because it doesn't fit the false, fake political narrative of the Democrats, which is everybody's going to die. It's Trump's fault. wear a mask, government control, stay at home, tank the economy, don't get good jobs numbers, get Biden in, then we'll have a vaccine and there'll be an all clear. I mean, that's why, when I get people like Den Black call me up and they want from Chesapeake and they want to argue the numbers and the statistics, I laugh. This is not about numbers or statistics. It has nothing to do with that. This is a political agenda to beat Trump. November 3rd, one way or the other, it all goes away. If Trump wins, it goes away. If Biden wins, it goes away the next day. Fauci and Birx will put out an all clear. They'll have some study they just did that hit at midnight that says the virus is gone. We all know that. So you know what? We got 45 days. Put your mask on. Deal with it. Get Trump to win. It's gone. John Fredericks Radio Network. Mike, thank you. Michael Betrus. Buy his book, Lockdowns on Trial, Amazon, or your favorite bookstore.